Toby jerked awake and hit his knee on something hard. Ow! Saliva drooled from his mouth, and he wiped it away with the back of his hand. He heard knocking. He lifted his head and looked around. Clothes were littered around him. He was on the floor of his bedroom at the foot of his bed. He'd hit his knee on his dresser. He'd slept on the floor all night. More knocking on the door. "Toby, get up," Dad said. "You have to go to school today." Connor bellowed through the door. "All right, I'm up," he yelled, and settled his head back on the carpet. He heard his brother walk away. Toby slowly sat up, wincing. His head felt like it wanted to fall off. His back burned as if on fire. He pushed himself to his feet, and the room spun. Oh, dang. He grabbed onto the dresser to keep him from falling again, and waited for the room to stop spinning. Even though he wasn't hungry, he had to eat something to keep up his energy. He didn't care to look in the mirror. He knew the shadow was still there. He could still feel its weight, could sense the darkness looming over him like a threat. Toby managed to shower first without falling over, but the spray hurt too badly, so he didn't let the water run down his back. He brushed his teeth, ignoring the shadow as it followed along in the bathroom mirror. He dressed and walked into the kitchen. His brother sat at the table, eating cereal, waffles, and 2 bananas. Connor stopped mid-chew when he spotted Toby. "You're really sick?" Toby didn't care to answer. "You look bad. What's the matter with you?" Toby just shook his head as he got out cereal and milk, then a bowl and spoon. "Why aren't you talking, Tobes?" He shrugged. "Maybe you should stay home another day." Toby looked at his brother in surprise. Where were all of the stupid remarks? All the put-downs? "I'm going." When Toby finally answered, Connor seemed satisfied. "All right, but if you got the flu, keep your distance." He wolfed down his cereal, waffles, and both bananas. He threw his dishes in the sink, gave a gnarly burp, and said, "Later." Then he walked out of the kitchen. A moment later, the front door slammed shut. Toby ate a few spoonfuls of cereal, but after a few minutes, he felt it was coming right back up. He ran to the garbage and puked. His body shuddered with spasms. He managed to straighten with a hand to his stomach. If he didn't know better, the shadow seemed to be sucking the life out of him. The idea of something overpowering him annoyed the heck out of him. He clenched his fist. "You are not going to win." Toby felt like a zombie at school. He passed the hall slow and tired. Kids stared at him as he passed, then looked away. Toby stared back, not caring about anything. Teachers didn't care what he did anyway. He'd never been a star student. In fact, he just went through the motions of school. Dad never cared about his grades. He just wanted him to pass and graduate. So that's what Toby set out to do. He went to school, did the homework he could, skipped the assignments that didn't make any sense, and he got passing grades. Sometimes barely passing, but credits were credits. When Toby came in as a freshman, and teachers discovered he was Connor Billings' little brother, they'd smile big and ask him questions. Connor was so confident, so conversational, great at sports. He did his best at schoolwork and extracurriculars. A real go-getter. Little brother Toby had to be the same. It ran in the family, right? Wrong. They found out quickly. Toby wasn't very outgoing. He never really made friends or joined any clubs. He didn't care to try his best like Connor had. Toby did what he had to do to walk the line up to his senior year. Soon, the teachers had stopped being friendly and started getting annoyed. He'd get looks of disapproval. And most of all, he got the looks of disinterested and dismissal. Like he didn't matter to them. Well, newsflash, the feeling was mutual. Toby detoured to the restroom before he ambled to his locker. There was a kid with headphones on, messing with his hair in the mirror. He was bopping up and down. Toby used the restroom, and when he turned to wash his hands, the kid froze, staring into the mirror. His mouth hung open in shock. The kid pointed to Toby, or more likely, to the shadow behind him. Dang it, he must be able to see the shadow in the mirror, too. Toby cracked his knuckles. Hey, look. The kid spun around to look at Toby, frowned, then looked back in the mirror. Before Toby could say more, the kid booked it out of the bathroom. As if he was running from a fire. Or more like a monster from a horror movie. Okay, later, Toby muttered as he washed his hands. Toby had gym class for the next period, which he realized was perfect for the next step in his plan. Today, his class was scheduled to play basketball. Mr. Dillenhall, a tall, bald man in a bright tracksuit, blew his whistle. He cocked his hips and leaned his clipboard against his big stomach. All right, line up for roll call. Toby, dressed in shorts and a t-shirt, lined up with the other kids. He'd been careful to stay away from any mirrors in the locker room. He just hoped he didn't see that scared kid again. That was all he needed, for a weird rumor to start going around school. A girl walked up and handed Mr. Dillenhall a note. What now? Mr. Dillenhall muttered. He skimmed the note. Fine, go take a seat. He rolled his eyes dramatically before getting to roll call. Billings! Toby raised his hand when Dillenhall looked up from his chart. For goodness sake, let's put some effort in today, Billings. Come on, kid. Toby just crossed his arms as Mr. Dillenhall continued taking attendance, occasionally making snide remarks to the other kids. Dillenhall's such a jerk, muttered Tabitha Bing. Kids call her Tab for short. Toby glanced at her, then turned away. She was sort of an outcast and liked to rebel against the system. She had a nose piercing and wore a lot of black. Occasionally, she started petitions to get things changed around the school. She'd attempted to run for student body president a couple of times, but she'd lose to the popular kids. She was always blowing little things out of proportion, in Toby's opinion. Since she seemed to be the total opposite of Toby, he usually steered clear of her. You don't talk much, do you, Billings? She asked him. Toby turned to her, and this time shrugged. Don't got much to say at school. She lifted her eyebrows and smiled. Unlike me, you mean. You said it, not me. All right, Dillenhall barked out. Let's break into your groups and play some basketball. I want to see some serious efforts on the court. None of these, oh, my chest hurts, or I twisted my ankle excuses, people. I want real athletes on the court. Let's go! As the groups gathered and started the games, Toby checked out of his group to use the restroom. He left the gym, glancing over his shoulder. No one was around in the hallway. He detoured to the high school pool, which luckily was free for the period. The strong scent of chlorine filled his nostrils as he scanned the clear water. He couldn't pound the shadow off of him, nor could he scrub it off. Now it was time for more intense measures. Hope you can swim, he said out loud to the shadow. Or not. He looked around for something heavy, but couldn't find anything in the pool to weigh him down. He jogged to the weight room. There were some kids in there, lifting weights, but Toby managed to sneak in and grab a heavy weight vest. Back at the pool, he slipped it onto his shoulders and buckled it at his chest. He bounced on the balls of his feet and felt the vest was a good weight to sink him to the bottom and keep him there. He walked back to the pool and stared at the still water. He bit his bottom lip. Not that he'd admit it to anyone, but he was a little scared. He could swim, but he wasn't used to holding his breath for a long time. He paced back and forth along the deep end of the pool. Come on, you could do this. What could go wrong? Nothing really. And hey, this could really work. You could be free of the shadow and get on with your life. He finally stopped pacing and stood in front of the pool. After taking a big breath, he pinched his nose and jumped into the deep end. Toby slowly sank to the bottom of the pool. Even though the school claimed it was heated, the water still felt ice cold. With the vest holding him down, he sat at the bottom and waited. He blinked, looking around the pool area. He could feel the chlorine sting his eyes. He wondered how long he could hold his breath, and he wondered if the shadow could hold his breath at all. Did shadows even breathe? He guessed he'd find out. This has to work, he thought. He couldn't live forever with the darkness at his back. Not only would it drive him crazy, but it would be a constant reminder that he was a failure. A loser. I will always win and you will always lose, like the loser you were born to be. No. He couldn't live like this forever. Too fast, it felt like his lungs were squeezing closed. So he pulled out the buckle to release the vest. This was all the time he could manage holding his breath. Hopefully, it was enough to drown the shadow off of him. But when Toby pinched the release, the buckle wouldn't unlatch. He tried to press the buckle to detach it again, but it wouldn't let go. A surge of anxiety shot through him. Toby jerked at the buckle, trying to pull it apart. He had the urge to open his mouth to breathe. Panic clawed at him as adrenaline flooded his system. He pushed himself from the floor with his feet, but the weight of the vest pulled him back down. He pushed up again, paddling his arms, kicking his legs, trying to swim to the top. But he was too weak from not eating much the last couple of days. He sank to the bottom, clawing at the vest. Oh no, someone help me! Help! There was a splash in the pool above him. Someone swam toward him. Toby couldn't fight it anymore. He opened his mouth and swallowed water as the person pulled him by the vest to the top. Toby kicked with his legs to help get the two of them to the top. He broke through the surface, gagging up water. Water and snot dripped from his nostrils. The person helped hook his arm onto the edge of the pool. He coughed and sucked in much-needed air. His lungs burned. His entire body shuddered with each breath. Toby opened his eyes to see a dreaded Tabitha being in the pool beside him. She was hanging on the side of the pool with one arm. His eyes stung, and he pressed his fingers into them. "What the heck are you doing?" she snapped at him. Toby pushed hair out of his eyes, breathing hard. "You wouldn't believe me if I told you." "Well, it better be a good enough reason for me not to report you to the principal, jerkwad." She pulled herself over the top of the ledge. Water streamed from her soaked PE clothes. Toby tried to climb out as Tabitha pulled his vest, struggling to get him onto the platform. His body felt like a dead weight between his drenched clothes and vest. With both of them helping, they managed to extract Toby from the pool. Toby rolled to his back, and Tabitha fell to the platform beside him. "For a skinny guy, you weigh a ton." She got to her feet and looked down at him. Water drops streamed down her arms and legs. "Meet me at the soccer field at lunch, or I'm going straight to the office to report you." Toby coughed. "It's not really your business." "I just saved your life. I'm making it my business. So which is it? Are you meeting me, or am I going straight to the office?" Toby lifted a hand and let it drop. "Yeah, fine. I'll be there. I wasn't trying to hurt myself," Toby said grudgingly to Tabitha. They sat together on the soccer field bleachers during lunch break. It was a nice day, but a breeze kept pushing the clouds over the sun every so often, making it a little cold. Toby was still chilled from the pool experience, so he huddled inside his sweatshirt. Tabitha's hair was black and pulled away from her freckled face. Normally, she wore makeup, but the pool water must have washed it all off. She was eating a sandwich that smelled like peanut butter. Then why the weighted vest? I was just trying to stay down for as long as I could, but the buckle got stuck, and I couldn't release it or swim up fast enough. Toby cracked his knuckles. So, thanks for helping me out." "Oh, you mean the saving your life thing?" She waved a hand. "All in a day's work." "You're a pretty strong swimmer." "My parents always said I was born to swim. I've been going to junior lifeguard camp forever." She shrugged. "Why did you want to stay down at the bottom of the pool for so long anyway?" Toby shook his head. How could he tell her he was trying to drown a shadow attached to his back and that it didn't work? When he went to the locker room to change, he saw in the mirror that it was still there behind him, more intense and scarier than before. "Here, have some of my lunch. You look like you need it," she said, handing him half of her sandwich. He put a hand to his gut. "Nah, my stomach is upset." "It's just bread and peanut butter. Try it." Toby accepted the half sandwich and took a small bite. It was gooey in his mouth, but he was able to get it down. It seemed he could keep it down as well, he realized with relief. "Why did you follow me?" Toby asked her. She ducked her head and shrugged. You looked, I don't know, like you needed a friend. Toby didn't have anything to say to that. What does needing a friend look like? You wouldn't believe me if I told you, she said to him. What? That's what you said at the pool. You wouldn't believe me if I told you. What did you mean by that? Toby wasn't sure why, but he had the urge to throw caution to the wind and tell her everything. He wanted to tell someone because to keep all this to himself stressed him out. Yeah, Reggie could actually see the shadow, but Toby hadn't wanted to tell Reggie everything. Maybe it was time to get it all off his chest. Staring down at her half sandwich, he started to tell Tabitha about hide and seek. How he cheated the game and broke it. How the shadow was now attached to him, and he couldn't seem to get rid of it. For some reason, he felt she could handle the bizarre truth, that she wouldn't run off and tell someone he was crazy. It was somewhat liberating to finally unload the entirety of this crazy secret to someone else. He felt himself exhale in relief. Who knew keeping in such a secret was so exhausting? That sounds completely and utterly terrifying, she said, and looked behind him. I can't see it. Toby nodded. I can only see it in the mirror. For real? He nodded. Yeah, you believe me? It actually sounds too crazy to be made up. I know that you believe it, and that's all that matters to me. People deal with their own darkness, in different shapes and forms. Okay, so she didn't completely believe him, but Toby understood. He couldn't even believe it. And he looked at it every day in the mirror. It was just a relief to get it all out, and for her not to tell him he was crazy. And you thought you could drown it? How'd that work out for you? I'm just trying everything I can. It didn't work anyway. Have you told your mom or dad? It's just my dad. Tried to tell him and my brother. But they didn't understand what I was talking about. They couldn't see it either. But you've told me. Toby sighed. I don't know why. She nodded. Sometimes it's easier to tell a stranger. I get it. So why did you cheat the game? Toby picked at the sandwich. Have you ever felt like you're never good at anything? No. He stared at her. Good at anything at all. Like a total loser. No. And you're not a loser. His lips curled in a sarcastic smile. Right. Have you not seen the way the teachers look at me? Like Dylan Hall? I'm not worth their time. Look, life is what you make it. You can't think like that. I don't think like that. I feel it. It doesn't matter anyway. I wanted to win, and I thought the only way I could was by cheating. I was stupid. She didn't say anything to that, and instead pulled a small circular mirror from her bag. Okay, let's see it. Toby shook his head, scooting away from her. No way. She waved the mirror. Come on, why not? Because it's bad. Really bad. You don't even understand how bad. She stared at him. I can handle it. He stared at her with wide eyes. I can't even handle it. Okay, fine. You don't have to show me. She slipped the mirror back. So what are you going to do about it? Toby stared out at the soccer field, but he wasn't really seeing it. I'm going to beat it. What other choice do I have? They sat a few minutes in silence before Tabitha said, Let me see your phone. He glanced at her. Why? Just let me see it, she said, annoyed. Toby handed her his phone. She called a number, and her phone rang. Then she typed something into the phone and handed it back. I added myself as a contact. You know, if you ever need me to save you again. Toby actually cracked a smile. Okay, thanks. Toby went back home after school. Usually he was starving by the time he strode into the kitchen. But today he felt different, nervous, agitated, and he definitely had a serious loss of appetite. He grabbed a banana when his phone alerted him with a text from Tabitha. Hey, I know an excellent counselor you could talk to. No way. Okay, fine. Toby shook his head and clicked off the phone. But he couldn't help smiling a little. Tabitha was kind of cool. She took in everything he told her, and didn't even look at him weird. It was cool to have a new friend. Not that he'd tell her that. Toby talked to a few kids at school, but he wouldn't call them friends. He used to have a best friend named Manny, but he moved away with his family when Toby was in middle school. Since then, Toby kind of shut himself off from other kids. Maybe it was time to open up again. Just to keep his energy, he attempted to eat the banana. He got about half of it down before he felt like gagging. His head jerked up when a knock sounded at the front door. Who could that be? He answered the door to a clean-cut police officer with brown skin, short buzzed hair, and a mustache. Toby swallowed hard. He still had the half-eaten banana in his hand. "I'm looking for Toby Billings," he said. "That's me." Toby adjusted the beanie on his head. "I'm Officer Jimenez, Toby. I'm here about the break-in and vandalism at Freddy Fazbear's Pizza and Games. Dan Harbour stated that you worked there, and that you were there on shift that evening. He gave me your address." "Uh-huh." Officer Jimenez had a small notebook and a pen in his hand. "Can you walk me through your shift that evening?" Toby looked at his banana. "Well, I vacuumed the carpet in the main party room and arcade, swept up in the bathrooms, wiped down tables, put up chairs, picked up trash from the floor. My regular stuff." "What time did you end your shift?" "Mr. Harbour said you must have forgotten to write on your timesheet what time you left." Toby scratched at his neck with a free hand. Yeah, I was off at 11 p.m. I must have forgotten to sign out." "Yeah, because I'd run out." Officer Jimenez wrote something in the notebook. "What time did you last see the game before it was vandalized?" Well, after closing." "Wait, should I have said that?" "So around 10 p.m. He nodded. "Yeah, I think so." "There were no signs of a break-in. Toby, did you notice anyone hanging around who wasn't supposed to be there after closing?" He blew out a breath, shook his head slowly. "Nope, no one. Same thing I told Dan. I checked the stalls in the play area where kids tend to hide." Officer Jimenez looked directly into Toby's eyes. "Toby, I want you to be completely honest with me." "Yeah, okay." "Did you vandalize the game hide and seek?" "What?" "I have to ask. You were the last one to see the game. You were working in the restaurant near the time of the crime. Everyone else was in the kitchen. You didn't sign out to end your shift. Maybe you were in a hurry because you'd vandalized the game. Maybe you were upset with your boss or someone. I've seen it before. And you didn't want to get in trouble, so you ran. Is that how it happened?" Toby stepped back. "No. It wasn't me." "Yes, it was." "Okay," he said sternly. "That's all for now. Let Mr. Harbour know if you remember anything else, or if you want to tell him anything else." "Yeah, okay." Officer Jimenez gave a nod of his head. "Have a good day." Toby nodded in return. He closed the door, still tense. He wondered if the officer believed him. It didn't sound like it. It sounded like he thought Toby did it. He wondered if he was going to get caught. Toby scrubbed a hand down his face. He had too many things to focus on. He was trying his best to figure out how to be free of the shadow. He also had to worry if he was going to get caught for breaking hide and seek. One thing at a time, please. He walked into the kitchen and threw the half-eaten banana in the garbage, then detoured into the front room. Beside his dad's recliner was a small tray table with a lighter and an ashtray. He grabbed the lighter and flicked it, but it didn't light. He shook the lighter and flicked it again. This time, the flame lit. He bit his bottom lip, staring at the flame. Maybe... He released the igniter, then shook his head, muttering, "No frickin' way." He tossed the lighter back on the tray. Was that a cop at the door? Toby jumped and whirled toward his dad. "Dad, you scared me. I didn't know you were home. Where's your car?" "Getting a tune-up. I took the day off." "Why the cop? What did he want with you?" Toby cracked his knuckles. There was a break-in at Freddy's. Just a routine, questioning the employees who were there that night. Are you sure that's all it was? Toby blinked. Yeah. Why wouldn't I be? You're not in any kind of trouble with breaking the law. No, Dad. But he was in trouble. Dad nodded, sat in his recliner, and turned on the television. Toby walked away, then turned around to stare at his dad. He wanted to tell him the truth. He wanted to tell him that he cheated the game and destroyed it in anger. That the game had somehow attached to him and followed him home. He wanted to tell him so that his dad could help him. So he could do what parents were supposed to do and help their kids when they were in trouble. Not just go through the motions of life like everything was okay when nothing was okay. Not to pretend as if he never had a wife. And Toby and Connor never had a mom. Not to pretend as if he had two happy sons, who never called each other names or fought with their fists. As if life was all about working for a paycheck and watching sports. Dad? Yeah, Tobes, Dad said, not taking his eyes off the television. Why did Mom leave us? Dad didn't move his head from the screen. He didn't even flinch from the unexpected question. Toby wondered. When was the last time he ever saw his dad express any emotion, other than excitement or disgust from watching sports? His dad was pretty much the mellow type. Toby had never seen him get seriously angry, other than to yell at refs on television. When he told Connor or Toby something, it was all very calm and rational. Maybe it was a bonus to have a parent who didn't yell at you or scold you. A minute passed as he waited for an answer from his dad. Then 2 minutes. After 5 minutes, he realized he wasn't going to get an answer. He didn't know if it was because his dad didn't have one, or if he didn't feel Toby could handle the truth. Toby left the room to get ready for work. Toby went up with his regular routine and went in an hour before his shift to play games in the arcade. When he arrived, he noticed the hide-and-seek door propped open with a sign that stated, "Out of order." Curious about hide-and-seek, he slid his hand inside his pockets and walked inside the game room. There was a tall, skinny guy standing by the control box. He had a laptop in his arms and seemed to be rebooting the game. His hair was blonde and spiky, and he wore thick framed glasses. "Hey," Toby said to the guy. "How's it going?" "All right," he said, eyeing him. "You know the game's out of order. You supposed to be in here?" Toby cleared his throat. "Yeah, well, I work here. Gonna start my shift soon." The tech guy seemed to relax a little. "Well, truthfully then, I'm not doing so good. Hide and seek here won't reboot. It says it's rebooting, but once it starts again, it goes back to the previous game every time. Must be some kind of wiring issue." "It's stuck?" "Yeah, stuck in the game mode with the last player. Some kid named Toby." All the blood seemed to rush out of Toby's head. He felt faint. "Really? Can't you just shut it down and restart it?" "Normally, yeah, but something's off. I'm telling you, it won't stop the game. Never seen anything like it. Must be defunct." Dan ain't going to like to hear that. Not after he found out who tore up the game also took the rabbit. "What?" "Bonnie the rabbit. The character. The black cutout rabbit for the game is gone. Whoever messed up the game took the rabbit right off the wall like some kind of souvenir. I can't believe it. Probably stuck it in their room or threw darts at it or something. Kids these days. No offense." "Yeah, none taken." The tech guy shut his laptop. "Well, going to give Dan more bad news. I advised him to put in a camera from the beginning, but he was already dishing out a boatload for this game. Anyway, I'd stay clear of him today if I were you, kid. Maybe he shouldn't have ever installed this game." "Yeah. Anyway, Dan's a good guy. He just wanted what's best for the business. Give the family some entertainment. A place to have fun. But this is how he's repaid. Sucks, you know?" When the tech guy left, Toby quickly strode through the kitchen, smelling pepperoni and melted cheese. He walked to the single-employee bathroom and closed and locked the door behind him. He leaned his hands on either side of the pedestal sink, staring into the small mirror on the wall. He stared into the darkness at his back, with all the anger and frustration he had inside of him. He hadn't taken the rabbit cutout from the game. No, it had decided all on its own to leave with Toby. And as Toby stared hard at the shadow, 2 eyes opened and blinked at him. Toby lurched back and yelped. His heart pounded like a drum. He grabbed at the door, trying to open it, but because he was staring at the horror in the mirror, he forgot he'd locked it. He took his eyes off the shadow for a second, unlocked the handle, and whipped open the door. He rushed out and ran into Dan. Toby stopped short, breathing hard. Dan? Dan gave him a weird look. You all right, kid? Toby cracked his knuckles, trying not to shake in front of his boss. Yeah, why? You look nervous about something. Toby adjusted his beanie. No, I'm fine, really. His face heated because he was far from fine. Dan eyed him some more. Okay, kid, whatever you say. Then he walked into his office. Toby sagged against the bathroom door. His phone signaled with a new text. It was Tabitha again. What about an herbalist? They can give you stuff to calm your nerves. No way. Well, it was just an idea. I'm here at Freddy's. Come meet me in the arcade. Surprised, Toby clicked off his phone as he hurried to the arcade to find Tabitha, who was peering over a kid's shoulder as he played a game. Reggie was right beside her, eating pink cotton candy on a stick. Toby stopped at her side, rubbing his damp palms on his shirt. What are you doing here? He was already nervous, and it made him even more nervous to have her at the scene of the crime that he had just confessed to her. When he told her his secrets, she'd been someone separate from his everyday life. She didn't know much about him or Freddy's, but now that his separate worlds were colliding, it felt weird and uncomfortable. Tabitha smiled as she looked around the arcade. This is a cool place. I've never actually been here. My parents aren't into places like these. It's a family pizza restaurant. She shrugged. They're vegans. She looked back at Toby, her smile dropping away. Hey, are you okay? Yeah, fine. Who's your friend, Toby? Reggie butted in. Hey, I'm Reggie. Tabitha glanced at Reggie. Tabitha. Reggie looked at Toby and lifted his eyebrows a couple of times in an annoying way. You come here often? He asked her. No, first time. Toby frowned at Reggie. He knew Tabitha wasn't a regular. What was up with him? He took Tabitha by the elbow and guided her away. Over her shoulder, he watched Reggie keep pointing to Toby, then to his own back. Then he made a big gesture like he was huge, then a scary face. Then he mouthed very slowly, Shadow, bigger. Toby rolled his eyes, then asked Tabitha, What are you doing here? I want to see the game. Toby shook his head. No way, can't. It's out of order. No one is supposed to be in there. Can I at least see the outside of it? Please, I'm curious. Toby sighed. He didn't think it was such a good idea. But he felt if he didn't let her see it, she'd just keep on about it until she got her way. Fine, but then you better go. Okay. And look, I trusted you with this. Don't make me regret it. You won't. I promise. She crossed her heart with her finger. Toby led her out of the arcade and to the door of hide and seek. He crossed his arms and she studied the shadowed rabbit and the logo. Seems so innocent, but then, it's something dark and scary to a friend. She looked at Toby. How do you feel? Like it's always there, and I'm never going to get rid of it. Toby shifted uncomfortably. Why was he telling her stuff like this? You'll beat it, Toby. I'm making a list of ideas, like the ones I've been texting you about. I'm going to help you figure out how to solve this. We're going to get you in a better place. Toby just stared at her, not knowing what to say, other than why. Why did she want to help him? Why did she even care? He wasn't sure he wanted her help anyway. He wasn't sure he could totally trust someone in that way. It had been so long since he trusted anyone. He'd learned being let down pretty much sucked. He adjusted his beanie and sighed. Whatever you want to do.